So welcome to News Now. We're joined here with a special guest this morning, the Wayne County Prosecutor Kym Worthy. It's great to have you here on News Now.
Great to be here.
Absolutely.
I was just admiring your aesthetics around here.
Oh, well, we love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. You know, it's a great spot, right?
It is. And especially when you compare it to the old one. I know it has a lot of history, but this is better.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're glad for you to be a part of our history of news makers and decision makers. So first, let's talk about the journey. What inspired you to enter the race for prosecutor, become a part of the judicial or justice system, rather?
To enter the prosecutor's race, I had been an assistant prosecutor right out of law school and had enjoyed a 11-year, almost 12-year career. The last 6 years were exclusively doing serial rapists, murderers, murder cases for 6 years. And we had a new prosecutor that came. I was on the bench at the time. So I went from the prosecutor's office to the bench. First recorder's court. We all are really familiar with that history, and hopefully that we'll revisit that at one point. And then, of course, we were all grandfathered into Wayne County Circuit Court. My old boss, John O'Hare, was my boss when I was an assistant. I retired, and there was an open seat. And I was not quite enamored of some of the things I saw coming out of the prosecutor's office from his successor. And so I knew that I'd had a 12-year career as a prosecutor, trying cases each and every day. I had been on the bench at that time for about 8 years, a little over 8 years, presiding over criminal cases every day. So I had almost a 20-year history of working criminal cases. And I didn't think frankly, there's anyone more qualified than me. So I decided to quit my judgeship because in Michigan, you have to step down if you have a judgeship a year before the primary election. For whatever reason, I don't know. If you're going to run for an office where you have to declare partisanship, Democrat, Republican. So I stepped down in August. I let the governor know I was vacating my seat, stepped down, because I frankly thought that I would do a better job.
Yeah. And you have been in this role ever since.
Yes.
I'm sure it has been a challenging one. It's not an easy job.
It's very challenging. It ebbs and flows. There are different kind of periods of time where things were very, very different. Oftentimes it depends on who the other elected officials are. Sometimes it depends on the economy and other things going on in the world and in southeastern Michigan. And right now, of course, it's extremely challenging, more than it has been any of the other years because of the pandemic. Either right before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and certainly now, since I guess it's been declared post-pandemic now, I guess, it's still extremely difficult. The Great Resignation hit us, like everybody else. Some people did not want to return from remote work. And just a lot of people had, in every industry, had some changes about how they want to live their lives. And so we, even today, have 30 to 35 open vacancies for just lawyers.
Wow.
And then many other vacancies, probably over 100 through the office. The county has like 1 in 4 openings. And so
I wanted to touch on that because COVID has really put a lot of different workplaces in a whole new reality. So I wanted to touch on that because during the height of the pandemic, of course, the courts shut down. And so did that not create in addition to being understaffed in some ways,
huge.
Did that create also case backlogs? We understand that has been reported. And so that created another challenging situation in trying to do the best you could to keep streets safe by prosecuting those that needed to be prosecuted.
Well, not everybody. A lot of people thought, well, the prosecutors aren't in trial anyway, so, what are they doing? And what they don't realize is we have to manage cases from 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, and now 23. And prior to the pandemic, Wayne County was really kind of a model because we could get through cases from the time the prosecutor's office charged until the person was sentenced, if they went to trial or whatever, in 90 days. You look at LA, Chicago, New York, they were used to having their defendants wait in jail for 2 years. That was just not unusual for them. It's extremely unusual for us. And so not only did we embark on responsibility and letting people out of the jail that would be safe, that they wouldn't be a danger to themselves or to the public, but now we're looking at all those cases and the horrible increase of crime during the pandemic. So we were seeing even more domestic violence, even more child abuse, more violent crime that was more violent than before, child abuse that was more violent than before, domestic violence that was more violent than before. And of course, one of the biggest areas that surprised us all were the criminal car accidents. And I don't want to say criminal car cases, where people were drag racing. I don't
Oh,
know,
yeah.
because of the streets were, and all of us who drive, we see it every day. People blow through red lights, that there's no rules of the road, and that kind of behavior creates a whole lot of problems. So
Very
we have
dangerous situation.
a lot of cases where people are super drunk, or because of where they're driving, they kill people. So,
how do you balance that of trying to recognize prosecutorial discretion while also, trying to keep the city of Detroit or Wayne County streets safe, rather, when there is this narrative of people who commit crime somehow end up back out on the street very quickly? And we know that's the multiple factors between local police agencies, the court system, but how do you try to balance the prosecutorial discretion?
There are a lot of factors that you can't kind of parse down into a few minutes, but we always have tried, whether the pandemic happened or not, try to be very, very good with our discretion. We're really big in my office on second chances and diversion programs. Just a quick fact for you, we have diverted over 25,000 people since I've been the elected prosecutor out of the criminal justice system, both juveniles and adults. So we still continue that practice. But again, we still will charge if we can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That has not changed. What has changed is we really have to take a deep dive and look at the kind of offers we're making people, because we are making offers we probably wouldn't have made years ago because of the big backlogs. You have a family that's lost a loved one, a child, say, their case might be scheduled for 2024. And so we look at that. Do we want to, we tell them, do you want to wait until 2024? Or perhaps we might want to agree that the defendant can plead guilty to a lesser number of years so we can resolve it now. So there's all kinds of things that we go into. It's not an algorithm, but it's all kind of, we bring the victims in, we try not to make any offer, but we have to move the cases. We can't have the backlogs we have now and be successful.
I want to ask you about what you see as your greatest achievement in the office, but I can't ask you that without also bringing up the fact that your office took on the abandoned rape kits in Detroit some years ago, and have really prosecuted those cases to the fullest extent. Continues to test. Definitely one of the great achievements of your office. Can you expand on that more as what you see as one of your greatest achievements?
I don't know if I would. I guess the way I would put it is that there are things that I'm particularly proud of. Besides the work that we do every day, especially in the times that we are doing now, we're particularly proud of my staff on the way we're trying to operate now. That's probably one of the biggest. But that was a big one. We worked from nothing. We started from nothing to test. When I say nothing, no money. When it was costing at that time $1,200 to $1,500 a kit to test, and we had well over 11,000 to test. So you can do the math. But so we found a way. We worked really hard establishing partnerships. I knocked on doors like I was running a campaign, because I was running a campaign for resources to try to get these kids tested.
You got the Law and Order actress.
Mariska Hargitay got involved. It's a very interesting chance meeting that we had, and she followed through. And in fact, I'll see her tomorrow. And we still work today on these kits and national policy. And so to date, we have over 200 rapists off the street that wouldn't have been off the street. We've identified over 800 serial rapists and have all kinds of stats that we're very proud of, and then created national policy and statewide policy too.
Along this journey, and what I'm sure inspired you to, get into the world of prosecution, the judicial system. But we're also living in this era, and maybe it's a continued era of this narrative of this, a two-tier justice system where people feel like Lady Justice isn't blind at all, if you will. How do you combat or try to uphold institutions like your office and making sure that you are fair and just?
I've always had a different mindset. In fact, when I came into this job in 2004, I wanted to talk about second chances. I wanted to talk about, changing the root causes of crime. I want to talk about the culture, changing the culture of crime. I want to talk about helping people, juveniles, not traverse the adult bridge into adult criminality. I want to talk about all of that and still be tough on crime and keep our citizens safe. And I was widely ostracized for that, because that's not how prosecutors thought back then. Now you hear all about progressive prosecution all over the place.
Yeah, everywhere.
We were doing that back in 2004 when no one else was. And so we just tried to look at different ways to solve our issues. You can still be tough on crime, and you can still console that mother who's lost a child. You can still try to bring justice to the 90-year-old woman who's been raped, or the 95-year-old who had their car jacked, or people who have gotten their car stolen, people, the opioid crisis, people who who are, robbery armed. People come outside and see their car gone. And so you can still do all that and have compassion too. But you just got to find a way to do it. You have to believe intimately that you look at these cases individually. You don't sign cases in the first place that you cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt. We do not sign cases hoping it's going to get better. We do not sign cases with, thinking that this is a way we're going to hold this defendant's feet to the fire. A person can be guilty as sin, and we can know it. And if we can't prove it, we do not charge it. We charge, for example, about
or innocent until you can prove.
Well, right.
Based on what a law enforcement agency brings you, the evidence that they
we
bring
have to
you.
have the evidence to prove the case beyond. The criminal standard is the highest standard there is, and we're not going to charge a case. I mean, we're not infallible. Of course, we have made mistakes, but that is our mantra. That's our marching order. We're not a rubber stamp for the police. So we probably bring about an average about 2/3 of the cases that are brought to us by police agencies we charge in some way, shape, or form, or fashion. There's 1/3 that we don't. For example, we do 10,000 domestic violence cases a year, 10,000, and we probably charge about a little less than half. And so again, we look at all these cases, and it's hard to do because these are the dangerous cases. These are the cases that turn into homicides. But if we can't prove that case, when we will not sign our name to it, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And going back and speaking to accountability, one of your most high-profile cases that people here in Detroit know about, and is where you receive national high-profile, is the case against former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. Do you still think about that case, or what the former mayor is, the life that he lives after that entire saga that really brought a lot of bad light on the city?
No, there's no reason for me to think about the case. That was in 2008. It was a very unpopular decision at the time to charge him. But again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We don't stick our fingers up and say, see which way the wind blows, and then we're gonna take a public opinion poll and try to figure it out. That's not what we do. Regardless of everybody, if 100% of the people are not going to like what we do, and it's the right thing to do, and it's the just thing to do, and we can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, that's what we're going to do. And I suffer the harshness of those decisions all the time.
Yeah.
But I can look at myself in the mirror and know that we are doing what we're supposed to do, and we're doing what's right. Oftentimes people will agree with us, and that's fine. But that's not the standard. The standard is, can you prove that case in the criminal court beyond a reasonable doubt? So we charged that case. We knew we had a strong case when we charged it. We knew it was going to be controversial, but that's not how you want a railroad. If you can't take the heat for the just decisions that you make, then you have no business in my chair. And so it can be very difficult at times. It can be very satisfying at times. But at the end of the day, especially when you live in a jurisdiction as diverse as Wayne County, where you have your largest city being the city of Detroit, that has its own past and history, that's why my perspective happens to be a little different. And so, but again, you have to be strong enough. And strong is not really the right word. And courageous is not the right word. It's just you just have to do what's right. Do what you're supposed to do, what you're trained to do, and what a prosecutor is supposed to do.
And a couple more questions, but to the level, speaking to the word of accountability again, there have been cases within your office that have been prosecuted where people have been sent to prison, and then you have groups that come around years later with a new fresh sets of eyes and new evidence and technology that go back on cases and say, hey, a judge may have found this person that was locked up and prosecuted by your office to be not guilty, or to be set out on prison for a wrongful conviction, if you will. Do you ever look back and say you wish your office would have done some things differently, or take account onto those type of situations?
Well, I think accountability, of course. I think you're talking about our CIU unit, our Conviction Integrity Unit, which we started back in 2016, and I have wanted to have one since 2005, and have been working toward getting it and getting the funding for it. And we finally did get the funding for it, and we started it up in 2016. And the reason why I wanted to have a Conviction Integrity Unit is exactly what you just said. No office, in my opinion, no prosecutor's office, in my opinion, should be afraid to look at their old convictions and make sure they're sound. So our standard and our protocol is there must be a plausible claim of new innocence before we will, not new innocence, but plausible claim of innocence before we look at that case. And we vet those cases, and we have probably about 1,200 cases that we're working on at the same time, 1,200 requests that we have. So we're working our way through that, and in fact, budget season is coming, and so we're going to be asking for that budget to be doubled for that unit. But again, if we find through our investigation, and remember, these are prosecutorial led, and so by the same office who convicted that person. And if we find throughout that investigation one of two things, either one, the person is not guilty of what the crime was, we will exonerate that person. Or number two, I could still believe that person is guilty, but if their trial was so flawed and so unjust based on a number of things, whether it be police conduct or whatever it may be, police misconduct or whatever it may be, then we're going to still give that person a new trial. And so that is hard work. These are very tough decisions. But we will make those tough decisions in the interest of justice. And I was the only one. We were the first ones in the state of Michigan to have one. Not the one first in the country, the first in the state of Michigan to have one. I think everybody should. The AG's office, has one now as well, and I think there are 3 other counties in the state of Michigan that have them now.
Yeah. You will answer this how you will, but everyone's talking about it in the public, and there was a council, and I asked this because there was a council meeting this week where Councilwoman from District 2, Angela Whitfield Callaway, talked about the case of the gas station owner or clerk who closed his door, locked his doors to customers inside. Is there some type of a policy or stance by prosecutors like yours or in other jurisdictions who consider cases of locked doors or the constitutionality of locked doors at places of business?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that case at all, and even the general policy. But I also think but I have a general, because oftentimes when lawmakers, and I'm not blaming anybody, when you hear about things in the news, they don't know the facts exactly, or they react on facts they think they know. And I always think that we shouldn't be reactionary. We should wait to see what the facts are before we seek to change any laws. So I'm not going to comment on that case or what I think about locked doors at all. We'll do that commenting in court when we do this case. And then after that, I think it's more wise for people to react, lawmakers especially, because sometimes we end up with laws that are not based on what the facts were. And I think we should wait and do our due diligence, see what's going to happen before any laws are changed. And I'm not talking about that specific thing, be very clear.
Sure.
I'm not talking about that at all, but other situations that we've heard about where people have rushed to change laws when it may not have been necessary if they knew the full facts.
Finally, how do you hope to be remembered?
Well, as my father is 95 years old. He is the oldest living person of color that graduated in the United States that graduated from West Point. So I was raised by him and a mother who also had a master's degree back in the 50s, although she was a stay-at-home mom. And one thing that they always told me, and this is what I tell my own children, the first and foremost thing is not what you do. It's not who you are. It's not what your name is. It's not how much money you have. The first thing you should be teaching your children, and what you must be most proud of, is being a person of good character and integrity, regardless of whether if you collect trash, be the best you can be. If you're a lawyer, be the best you can be. If you're a teacher, be the best you can be, but do it with character and integrity. So I would like my legacy to be that I did things that were the right thing to do for the right reasons with character and integrity.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on News Now. We appreciate you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
County Prosecutor Kym Worthy here at Michigan Chronicle.